Hello there, everyone. Welcome to the first live of this year. I hope everybody had a really great break from trading over the past couple of weeks or so. Back to sort of normality this week. Going to be going over the strength meter, going to be going over some charts to watch. And yeah, hopefully we can replicate some of the markets that we found last year with some trends and continue to provide you with all some good value. So let me know if you're here today. Drop a comment so I can see it. Happy New Year, Annie. Thank you for joining the live stream. As always, guys, if you want to ask any questions while we're going along, please feel free to do so. Any charts that you're watching that you want me to take a look at as well. I'm going to go over some yen pairs today, as well as the main sort of currency pairs. We're going to take a look at gold as well at some point. So we are going to get across to pretty much everything today. But if there's any kind of markets that you do want me to take a specific look at, maybe it's the stock market, maybe it's some commodity, then yeah, please do let me know. So first of all, I always like to start off with the news in the market. You know, we want to just make sure that we're aware of what's going on. Obviously today, there's still some bank holidays around. We've got a bank holiday in Japan, and we've also got a bank holiday in Switzerland. And obviously we had that unfortunate earthquake in Japan, which has caused sort of tsunami warning and things like that. Those have gone away now, but the damage in Japan is something that we haven't really seen the markets kind of take any kind of notice of just yet. Whether that's because we actually haven't seen Japan come back into the market just yet, we may see it heavily influence it over the sort of end of the week. So we need to keep our eyes on what the situation is going on there. But other than that, today there's no real high impact data. We do have some data coming up towards the end of the week. We've got mainly dollar-based data. We've got the ISM manufacturing PMIs still expected to be below 50. So dollar weakness is still something that I'm quite interested in the short term. We've got JOLTS job openings as well, and the first FOMC meeting minutes of the year. We then also have non-farm payrolls towards the end of the week as well, which is, again, going to be something that market participants are going to be keeping a very close eye on. Fed want to see that labour market continue to sort of stay at these kind of levels. Don't really want to see any kind of major jumps in that. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think the dollar at the moment is still fairly weak, so it'll be interesting to see if that can continue or whether we do see any kind of strength coming back into the market. Good afternoon, Vincent. Thank you. Thank you for joining again. Let's have a little look then. So one chart that I really like the look of, actually, let me just bring in the currency strength meter. So if you're looking for a place to find the currency strength meter on a regular basis, you can head over to the VIP trading room on Blueberry Markets. Let me just change the viewpoint here so you can see this a little bit better. I've got my own channel in here. If you just go down to John's updates, you'll be able to see I post a bit of analysis in there as well. So if you want some further detailed analysis, you can head over to that. But let's take a little look at the strength meter first for this week. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so we can all see it here. And the two currencies that stand out to me are the US dollar and the Japanese yen. You can see I've got a key at the bottom down through here. And the US dollar is the red line and the Japanese yen is the white line. And you can see that at the moment we have yen with a score of +6, and we have the US dollar with a score of -7. Okay, well, actually that's +7, isn't it? I'll take that back. +7 in here and -7. So these are two currencies that are on opposite ends of the strength meter at the moment, which basically tells us that the US dollar is an extremely weak currency at the moment. The Japanese yen is a very strong currency. Now, when we do get to these type of levels, I do start to have a picture in the back of my mind of, is there a reversal situation going to form from this, or are we going to see these currencies continue on those paths that they're already on? So at the moment, I don't see too much in the way of change. I think the market may have a couple of weeks. Obviously, there's a lot of US dollar data, so the dollar data this week could impact the strength of the US dollar, of course. So what I do like to see, though, when I'm looking at those reversals, is I want to see some kind of change, okay? We kind of discussed this over the past few weeks, especially with the US dollar. And what we looked at a lot was the fact that the US dollar kind of was in that reversal zone, but we weren't really seeing an uptick from the strength meter. What I like to see from this is I like to see it kind of move back within the sort of range between the -5 and the 5. That tells me that the market may have shifted. It's very much like what we see up here with the US dollar. There was a lot of strength in the market. We came above the +5 area, and then once we started to kind of break back down within the strength meter here, the dollar weakness followed into the market. That's what I like to see. I like to see, is it going to be sustained? Is it going to change? And I think if we break back above into that sort of middle area of the strength meter, that's when I'm going to be really thinking about that dollar change here. Okay, very similar to the yen as well. Yen very strong at the moment. Are we going to see any kind of potential for that move to the sort of downside here from a currency strength point of view? Other currencies that I quite like the look of, the euro. So you can see that the euro came up into the +5 area. It started tracking down. So the euro definitely on a decline here. I like the idea of being short euro yen at the moment. So we'll go take a look at that market first, because there's some good levels to have a little look at on that one. Other than that, I'm going to stick with sort of the yen pairs and the dollar pairs, really. So euro yen to the downside for me is a good one to have a little look at. So let's go flick over to that. I'll just pop this up here. This is euro yen at the moment. I actually looked at one position this morning. Haven't got into anything just yet. I'm going to see how this kind of develops. So this is the daily chart on euro yen, and we can see that we came up into the 158 handle. Now, 158 was actually a level I marked out before the Christmas break, because it was this high that formed back on the 19th of December. And we can see that price obviously spiked into that area here. It was also a low back on the 30th of October, and we rejected. Okay, once we rejected, I like to make a note of that zone, because it tells me that sellers have got involved at this area. Okay, so if I want to be short in a market, I want to be looking at where sellers have got involved previously. Can I get involved with that again? Okay, so price has come back up into that point. We had a rejection. I don't trade over the Christmas period, so I'm not involved in the market here, but you can see that we rejected, and we can see that we're getting strong daily bearish candlesticks at the moment, which suggests to me momentum is to the downside. I like the idea of price coming into the areas of support. One of those supports could be towards this 155 area, or down to sort of 154, these lows that formed back around the 18th of December. If we breach that, we've got these lows here that formed back in July of last year. So definitely an interesting market to have a little look at the moment. Cantor, I can see your question here. What's the time frame for the currency strength meter? I do the analysis on a daily time frame, but I update the currency strength meter on a week by week basis. So the way I do it is every Sunday I'll look at the charts and I'll go through my process of scoring the charts, and then basically that produces a sort of outcome, and then I put that into a change table for the week. So I try and understand the change of a currency from a week to week basis. If you want to look at how you can build your own, we've got videos on that on the YouTube channel. So if you want to have a little look at that, feel more than free to do that. I can probably get you the link a little bit later. If you leave a comment on the video, I will send you the link to those. But yeah, euro yen, I like the idea of being short this market at the moment. I'm looking at a couple of different areas. This morning I was eyeing up sort of this 156 handle. We have rejected it. We have started to push to the downside here, but basically what I saw was the market consolidated. And again, this is what we talk about over and over again. Consolidations are a good thing. It's where the market is trying to decide what it's doing next. Okay, there's almost a balance between buyers and sellers when you see a consolidation. When price breaches the consolidation, that's when we need to be alerted that there could be an opportunity. And you can see we actually retested the consolidation, which would have been a period of volume as well. So if I was just to zoom in a little bit here, and let's just pop in that fixed range volume profile for this example, you'll see that there is a buildup of volume within this consolidation in here. And there's going to be one or two things that happens. Price is either accepted back within volume, okay, or it will reject, okay. And in this instance, so far, we've seen price come back to that volume area, and it has had a slight rejection, and the market is starting to push to the downside. So that's a good sign, okay. It's telling us that sellers came back to test those volumes. They felt that they could add into positions, and the market has moved lower. So I like the idea of like I said, being short personally in this market. So I think any kind of rallies back towards this volume area for me would be a point of interest. I'll be looking to see if price could maybe come back up to the point of control of this area, reject it again. 2 rejections of a volume point would be good to see. So for me, I'm looking for a little bit of a pullback at the moment. Can we get a pullback? Can we see price come back into the volume? And can we see a bit of a continuation? Alternatively, for those that are a little bit more into sort of intraday trading, day trading, I have marked out that 156 here on the sort of hourly chart. This is what I've kind of got marked in at the moment. And again, you can kind of see the 50 moving average running through here. So one of my strategies for a trend-based system is for price to retest the 50 moving average and some kind of resistance, and then close back below, because that tells me that there could be potential momentum to the downside, especially on an hourly time frame. You can see the couple of rejections in here most recently. We haven't tested it yet. So as price kind of pushes lower, the moving average, because it's lagging behind price and is developed by price, you'll see that it will start to kind of push along with it. So if price kind of came back up into my zone here, maybe breaks back above the 50 MA and then closes back below, that could be an opportunity for me to look at a strategy entry for a move down towards that sort of 155. Like I said, 155 down to sort of 154, 50s could be a good area to target, especially in the short term. So maybe consider that if that's something that aligns with your beliefs as well, aligns with any of your strategies. We could go a little bit lower and start going into sort of your 15-minute, 5-minute time frames. I was eyeing up a break of the 200 on a 5-minute earlier. But like I said, I've waited to see how the market develops around this point. We're still kind of, it's still kind of the first day back, essentially. So I want to be a little bit more cautious going into the market. So 156 is a good place. I'm going to set an alert around about that 156 handle. I think if price can come back into that, form some kind of rejections, it might be something that we can look at for a move down towards this sort of 154 sort of 50 area. Okay, so euro yen definitely at the top of my list for an opportunity. Another market I did like I said, dollar yen I think is definitely something to have a little look at the moment. Dollar yen looks good from a weekly perspective. We just need the yen to be the main driver of this market, because otherwise we're going to be looking for a bit of a sort of reversal here. So euro is obviously getting weaker, yen stronger, euro yen downside makes a lot of sense. Dollar yen, opposite sides of the currency strength meter. So we've got to be a little bit more cautious when looking for an opportunity here, because price can be adverse to a quick reversal. Now, on the weekly time frame of dollar yen, I quite like the lows down through here around about the 138. We can see that price found support back here through July of last year, and it looks like a good area for sellers who are involved in the market to get out at that point. Okay, look like good targets. So I like the opportunity to potentially trade down towards this area here. Again, we've got to be a little bit cautious. We've got a lot of dollar data this week, so you maybe want to, the volumes may still be a little bit light, so you want to be a little bit cautious around those news events, okay? But we can see here, I've marked up a couple of areas of interest. My initial area this morning was this high here on the 4-hour time frame, we've breached that high now. So whenever we kind of breach a high, to me, that kind of negates that level. It's not really something that the market's taken into consideration at all. Okay, so the next level of interest for me comes up around about the 142.50 and above, and it is the high of the sort of last sell-off that we had most recently. So if price kind of pulls back up into that level here, this zone, we know that sellers have been involved here in the past because price moved from this level down to this level. Okay, so we can see physically via our charts that the market sold off. So if price comes back into that level there, are we going to see sellers come back into the market again? That's the question. If it doesn't and it breaches, then maybe we start to kind of shift our mindset and think of, is our bias that the dollar yen price is going to continue down towards those weekly lows? Is that something that makes sense to us anymore? If it doesn't, then we have to flip that perspective perhaps and start looking for that reversal opportunity. But if it does, then there's still options for us to try and maybe look for that short. So I do think 142.50 around that zone here, around that previous 4-hour high, is a good zone just to kind of narrow in on for a moment. And if price was to get back into that level there, we can start looking for like strategy setups and things like that. One thing can be, looking at this sort of change of trend on an hourly time frame. You can see that we're trading well above the 50 MA at the moment. So the narrative of price moving lower at the minute doesn't seem to be as strong as it would be if it kind of maintained itself below the 50 MA. We're climbing above it. Could mean that we are seeing that sort of bit of a pullback right now. So if price got into here and we saw kind of double top pattern, maybe something similar to what we saw here where we had consolidation, price closes below the consolidation, maybe something around there could be something to take a look at as well. I will just have a quick look at volume profile at this level. So I'm just going to go back to a four-hour time frame. Like I said, when you see periods of consolidation, that is often a sort of area where larger volumes are being built up in the market. So it's usually a good level to start having a little look at if there's any kind of price action going on around these points. So I'm just going to zoom in. I'm going to grab that fixed range volume profile. I'm going to go from this swing high up here back on the 19th of December, and we're going to drag it all the way down to the recent low which formed on the 28th of December. Just want to see where that volume within this area is starting to be built up from. So you can see that we've come back within that volume area. Price at the minute has been accepted back within volume. So remember what I kind of said before. If I take a look at where that sort of kind of volume starts to drop off, it's around this sort of area here. So now price is being accepted back within this value. There could be a good potential for it to move to the other side. Okay, then this is going to be a really important point because we've got a period of low volume, then a period of high volume, period of low volume. The market tends to move quicker through low volume areas than it does with areas of volume. Okay, so one or two options, I think. Well, actually, there's probably three options. If price remains to be accepted within this value area here, I'd expect to move up towards the high of the value area. If we don't and the market closes below, okay, that could be a sign that sellers are not really happy with price. Maybe price is going to revisit the lows. So that's kind of two scenarios there. The third scenario is if price comes back up into this zone through here, breaches it, then it'll probably go up towards the next volume level, which is around about that 143.50. I think my concern for dollar yen short bias would leave if we kind of traded up towards this low volume area. Anything above 144, I think I'd be a little bit concerned that that dollar yen kind of narrative of the potential short here is probably needs a little bit more rethinking at that point. That's just from a technical point of view. Obviously, depending on how the fundamentals change this week, could depend on sort of what happens next for dollar yen. You can see that the sort of moves are starting to get a little bit slower here. We've kind of come into these lows. We're not really forming new kind of lows where we've seen price close below the previous low. So if you kind of look at the lows that have been formed in the market and we kind of look at sort of that low there, we had a close below. This low here, we ended up getting a close below. And then now we're not really seeing significant closes below those lows. So again, are the sellers sort of starting to run out of steam here? Argue there's a sort of trend line through there as well. So I think your bias changes above 144. Okay, your bias needs to sort of change above 144, but we'll see what happens on dollar yen here. Dollar's just getting a little bit of strength at the moment. If we just flip back to the US dollar index, that could be because we're down towards this support here, 100.75. Lows back formed on the 27th of July, and we kind of pop back to the upside. So we are approaching resistance here towards the sort of 102.50. So the scenario in our head could be that dollar index reaches 102.50. We start to see some selling taking place in here. Maybe dollar yen is around that 143, 144 handle at that point. And then that's when we get the continuation of dollar yen to the downside. So definitely something to think about. I think if dollar index breaches 102.50, breaches this trend line resistance I've got placed in here, then I think, yeah, we're probably going to see that dollar reversal come back in. I think what we've got to really focus on is how the sort of PMI numbers come out this week. We can see ISM services PMI is actually forecast to come in a little bit lower. I think if we get a shock in the jobs data, obviously a jump above 200K would be something that we'd, expect to see some bullishness off. I think if we got above 200K, I'd expect to see a little bit of dollar strength coming to the market. But yeah, that's kind of my theory around dollar yen at the moment. Raheel, I can see your message there. Sorry. Euro dollar analysis, please. Yeah, let's go take a look at euro. Like I said, I like euro weakness at the moment in the market. And the weekly is kind of painting a picture that we are starting to see a little bit of euro weakness in the market. So we kind of came back up into the highs that formed back in July, and we had a little bit of a rejection here. The price has started to sort of sell off again. So one or two things that we could expect maybe from price is that if it is going to continue to sell off, where's it going to sell off to? Where is that sort of area of interest? I always kind of look at lows first. So that could be this area through here. It could be these swing lows, perhaps, okay, down towards that sort of 1.0425 handle and above, or these lows in here around about that 1.0750. So from a weekly perspective, that is, we've got those two kind of areas if price was going to continue to trade to the downside. Above that, we've got these highs where the market kind of hasn't come back and retested yet. Obviously, I highlighted that last sort of bearish candlestick before the move, because that's where obviously the market has changed from buyers to sellers. And we've seen a significant decrease in price. So price kind of reached the highs around about 111.40. So 111 handle is definitely a sticking point for price at the minute. Let's have a little look at how that reflects on our daily chart. So very similar to the analysis that I've kind of placed on the US dollar index. We've got sort of trend line support running through here, I would say. We have 111 highs, I think would be a smart area to look at resistance. So let's just put the coordinates in as 111. Remember, I always want to kind of use those whole numbers, quarter number, half numbers in the markets. And remember, they're always zones. So I always like to then mark in the sort of tip of the wick and the bodies within that area. So looking at this, to me, this looks quite bearish, okay, in terms of the sort of price action from the daily chart, okay. In terms of overall price action, we could argue that the market is in this sort of minor upward trend, okay. We can see that we've consolidated, we've made higher highs and higher lows. So the smart thing to usually do is to kind of stick with that sort of trend, isn't it, and look for areas for price to potentially continue the trend. So we do have kind of a minor support down through this area as well. So maybe around about the 1.0900. So let's just pop that in as well. So, and then we're going to just change that to a support. Okay, definitely a little bit of support here. We'll see this on the lower time frame. If we look at it from a 4-hour perspective, you can see through here there's that support area through there. Okay, so maybe that's where price is going to go and target, you know, on a sell. If the market kind of continues to push lower, that'd be a sort of area of interest for me. Again, if we kind of think of it in terms of volume, right, where is the volumes going to be? So I always look at sort of large breakout areas. Okay, so you've got this area down through here, which is consolidation, which is going to mean large volumes are being built. Okay, buyers have won at that point. We know that because we can see buyers have pushed price to the upside. Okay, there'll be some minor volume being built through there, and buyers have added in on that. Okay, the price has come back, the buyers have added in. So if I was to draw a sort of fixed range volume profile through this area here, let's say from this area to this area, I imagine we'd see large volume, low volume, a little bit of a pickup in volume through this area, and then some lower volumes as well. So let's go and do that. Just grab that from here to here. So yeah, you can see larger volumes down the bottom here, period of low volume, some pickup in volume there, and then the low volumes. Okay, so I always look at it and say to myself, well, where's the market going to try and go to pick up that potential volume as well? Is it going to be accepted within certain price parameters? So for me, we've got sort of one spot 1050 and below could mean there's a bit of volume within this area towards that 1 spot 0900. So price may want to be accepted within that period of volume there. We might come back up, reject it, kind of come back down towards that area here. This is where the market's got to make a decision. Okay, are we going to see sellers prevail through price and try and head towards that larger volume pocket? If it does, then we may see price move quickly through that 1 spot 09 towards the lows here around about that 1 spot 0750 handle. If not, and we see a rejection in here, then price may want to come back up and retest that sort of high of the volume, if that makes sense. So I like euro downside from a strength and weakness point of view, not necessarily against the US dollar at the moment, although I do like the idea of the dollar sort of weakness kind of fading a little bit. I just want to see more evidence that that is actually happening at the moment. That's why I've picked out euro yen. I think euro yen is a really good market to take a look at for the downside. So I think if you're considering euro dollar short, I think a little bit more of a smarter option could be a euro yen move. Okay, just from a strength and weakness point of view. Just having a little look to see if anything else has really got stronger recently. CAD starting to see a little bit of strength coming in. But I don't know how long that will necessarily last, depending on sort of the situation in the oil markets. What else have we got really that's gaining a little bit of strength? The Swiss franc also gaining a little bit of strength, but we're not really seeing that reflected at the moment. So hopefully that made sense on euro dollar. What else have we got? So Vincent said I got stopped out on CAD Swiss. Entry 6390. So let's go take a look at CAD Swiss. Not particularly a market that's on my radar at this current moment in time, but let's have a quick look. I mean, I can immediately see there's some kind of trend development here. I'm pretty sure that's at a major low, isn't it, CAD Swiss? So yeah, market has tried to rebound. We came up into that area here. We were probably talking a lot about this range. Market has breached the range to the downside now, so that is quite significant. Consolidation at the low, big breakout. So I assume you are short, Vincent, on CAD Swiss. I'm just going to pop in your entry details if you don't mind, just so I can see it. I'll just get a better vision of what you're looking at the time. So entry price was 63,918 and your stop loss was 64,094. Okay, So that's quite tight by the looks of it. That's a 17 pip stop loss, which I assume you've been stopped at in that kind of one fell swoop there. Did you use any ATRs on this or anything? Let's have a quick look. So I like the idea of being short where you're short. If we're looking at it again from a volume perspective, higher volumes up here, low volume area, the market's building volume in this point. So it's come and rejected it. So there could be a good reason to sort of stay short from here down to the low. We're also technically in trend. The market's consolidated, broken out, making lower lows, lower highs, right? So I like the idea of being short. That just might be a little bit tight. Also, I think one thing that I would say is if you used a sell stop order rather than a limit order from the zone, or I don't know what kind of order you have used. Maybe you did use a sort of live order at that point. If I was to sell here, let's say, after the market sort of rejected around this point, you can see price actually hasn't made a new low on the candlestick until here. Okay, so that would have given you a little bit more of an opportunity to stay within the market because you're selling with your bias. Okay, so the market could push with your bias rather than selling as price goes up. You sell as price starts to move to the downside. Okay, you've marked out a good area. I think this is a good area of support and resistance. I think I would have marked out something like this, and I would have looked at the lower time frame around this point. So one thing that I like to do is look at sort of a 15-minute, 5-minute trend at that point. So if I was to go down to a 5-minute time frame, we can see that price at this current moment in time, we hit the level. Okay, so my first sort of interesting area for me would have been this consolidation. If we breach that to the downside, I would have looked for the short. Okay, but you can actually see price continues to make higher highs and higher lows until this point in here, which kind of brings me back to the first time the hourly makes that lower low, lower close candlestick. Okay, so that instead would have given me a little bit more idea of, okay, maybe the momentum is starting to shift now. That could have been my short entry here, stop losses above the highs, and then look to see how price develops further. We've made a new low here. Maybe you bring your stops to break even, and so on and so forth. Remember, when you're trading a lower time frame, you do need to be a little bit more aggressive. I like the idea of being short in terms of the trend looks good from a technical point of view. Everything looks pretty good. We're in a bit of an unknown territory there, aren't we? I mean, on these particular charts, I can only go back to 2004. So I don't really know any information beyond that point. So if I was going to be short this market, I would only be looking to get out towards swing lows. Okay, so I'd be looking for that kind of opportunity. But like I said, CAD's was getting a little bit stronger on the strength meter. I don't know how true that is because of the situation with what's going on in terms of oil. If we just go flick over to the oil charts at the moment, we are seeing a bit of a bounce. We had seen a bit of a bounce in oil. Today we've started to see that sort of continuation. Potentially, OPEC need to make some further cuts, try and boost that demand again. So there could be some options for oil here. I don't really see it kind of doing too much at the moment. Consolidation towards the lows. The market looks like it might stick towards these lows for a little bit. Thank you. Got me into our lesson learned. Yeah, every trade's a lesson, Vincent. Absolutely. But it's awesome that you share your entries and targets here and stop losses, because we can break them down together and hopefully you pick something up from it, even if it's from me just looking at it in a different viewpoint. For you as well, you always want to learn on your previous trades. Okay, that's how you're going to develop. That's how you're going to know that when you experience the same things in a future trade, that maybe you should have a little bit more of a wider stop loss. You may even have a situation where you haven't kind of followed a sort of strategy entry, which is going to give you that sort of extra edge. So yeah, definitely consider that at the moment for those particular markets. I did miss your Aussie Swiss. Sorry, I was looking at something else there. You're also in Aussie Swiss as well. Aussie Swiss in a big range here. Are you long Aussie Swiss or short Aussie Swiss? So 57,695, stop loss 67,923. Let me just pop that in. Entry price 57,695. Stop loss was 57,923. Okay, so you're short Aussie Swiss as well. Let's have a quick look. Again, I think the area that you've picked out for a short is a good area in terms of, if I was looking at it from this 4-hour perspective, we've got that area there as the point of interest, isn't it? That's where the market is at the sort of the volumes being built in here. That's where it changes into low volume back towards these kind of highs. And the market is finding potential resistance around that point there. I do like the idea of that, potentially a move down towards these swing lows here. My only concern with this particular market is this daily chart, okay? Because my theory is that if the market is in a range, okay, I want to be looking to be short from highs, okay? If my bias is bearish and we're in a ranging market, I want to be short from highs. That is a high there, but it's a minor high. I like the idea of these highs up here. So the only preference from my point of view, not saying that there's anything wrong with that trade, to be honest. You know, if that meets your rules and everything has come in line for you, then great. Just from my experience, we're at a range low, and that would be an aggressive trade for me. I would see that as an aggressive trade. Again, I would kind of see, where's my stop loss in a position where the market shouldn't really go and seek it, okay? That to me is up towards this area here that I've drawn out, okay, above these swing highs. You know, if the market is going to stay short, we shouldn't really see it climb above those highs, just so risk reward reasons as well. So just be a little bit careful with that one. I'd say, depending on time frame you've got in on that, manage this one a little bit as well. What you don't want to see is obviously price making a new higher high. So, you know, if you breach this 57.80, you don't really want to be in that position anymore. If price does continue lower, look to see how it reacts towards the lows, okay? Do you see strong buying coming back in, or does it not really show any kind of momentum? If it doesn't, great, stick with it, okay? If it does and you start to see a little bit of buying coming out of it, there's no harm in coming out with it with a short bit of profit or a small bit of profit, or even break even. Break evens are good, okay? It means that you're on the sort of right lines. You just need to manage them a little bit better, okay? So yeah, that's Aussie Swiss. Let's go flick over to gold and whatnot. So I do like the idea of looking at gold at the minute. Seasonally, gold can be quite bullish this time of year, so there's a good opportunity to potentially look at some gold strength in the markets. Again, we're going to have to kind of keep this in line with what's happening in the US markets, because obviously gold is pegged to the US dollar, so you want to be essentially looking at what's happening in the dollar markets as well. But we rebounded from these 1970 areas here. This was an area we discussed before the Christmas break, which was the sort of potential that if price climbed above these levels, we could see a move back towards the $2,087 point, which was basically this high that formed on the 4-hour chart. We've come back into that zone now. We are breaching multiple levels here. We can see that we've breached into the sort of trend line support. We've breached here. So at the minute, gold's on a little bit of the back foot, okay? The market is kind of pushing back towards the downside here. We do have another trend line support. which is around about 2060. You can also see the 4-hour 50 moving average coming through that point as well. So maybe there's something to have a little look for here. You know, if you start to see buying coming back in at that point, we may see a move back towards that 2087, a breach back above that. We could see some significant gold moves higher. Will we see gold continue higher? I think that's a big question of 2024, to be honest. We had obviously inflation situations, and previously last year we also had sort of rate hikes and whatnot. So gold may have been a decent hedge last year for traders. The rhetoric is starting to change from central banks. So it'll be interesting to see if we do see any kind of development here from a seasonal perspective on gold. Like I said, keep an eye on that dollar. You know, one thing that you could do is have a little look at the bond market. So you got the 10-year yields. This was the area we pointed out, 3.8%. The market is starting to rebound from that area. If that continues, then you want to be looking at dollar strength at that point. Okay, so have a little look at your 10-year bonds, maybe even your 2-year bonds as well. If you start to see those rally, then that can be an inclination that the US dollar strengths back into the market. We should see gold fall on that sort of point as well. So be a little bit careful there. Let's have a quick flick over to the stock markets. Obviously, the S&P 500 was a big sort of interest for me coming into the end of the year. We came back in towards those all-time highs that formed back in January of 2022. We rejected a little bit. We could see there was a little bit of slowdown coming into that level. That's the weekly chart. This was an area where I like the idea of being long in the market. Buyers have obviously stepped back in at that point, but now it's looking like we're starting to see those buying sort of positions start to fade a little bit. And yeah, I think if we get a good jobs number, we may even smash this 4,800 area, to be honest. Better jobs or sort of an increase in jobs obviously fuels the economy, obviously fuels the idea of the sort of market remaining a little bit buoyant and a little bit stronger than expected. So it'd be interesting to see how that does develop this week, where the sort of stock markets could be. Obviously, there was a lot of AI stocks last year as well. So the NASDAQ performed pretty well. Technology stocks performed pretty well last year. So we did make all-time highs, but we are starting to see a little bit of a pullback from that now. So we'll see if that can continue this week. We'll see if the stock markets continue to fall, because that could also add a little bit of fuel to gold prices. You know, when stock markets start to decline, the market does tend to move towards sort of risk off. That's good for yen. So we've talked about the potential yen strength, but also potentially good for gold prices long. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. I'm going to leave it there, guys. We've been running for about 40 minutes or so, 43 minutes. Going to ease you into the live streams this week. We're going to have another live stream again on Thursday at 2 p.m. GMT. So I'm going to leave it there. I want to thank you all for joining me today. Really appreciate your comments, and thank you for joining me for the first live stream of the year. So give a shout out to Vincent. Thank you for your comments and questions, as well as Raheel, Cantor, and Annie. Thank you so much for your comments. Really appreciate it. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate if you could do that. And I will catch you on Thursday. So see you then, guys.